Welcome, everybody, to Mongols. This is our reaction show where we're going to break down what we saw as the Riverhounds took on North Carolina FC. I am Mike. Joining me for this one is Steve and Justin. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me this evening. Steve, how you doing?
Pretty good. Glad that it's not as hot as it's been today. Still crazy thunderstorms rolling through every few hours. Friday was our last admissions meeting, which is fantastic. So that's kind of done and in the books, and kind of feels like summer now with that those kind of end of the year things coming to a close. So just trying to get outside as much as I can, and I can do that now that it's not going to be blazing hot.
Nice. Justin, how was your weekend?
Yeah, had a great weekend. Had a little bit of adventure. I don't know. I think pretty much everybody who probably listens to the show knows I work at a church. And we showed up to church this morning. We're getting everything ready to go at 7 o'clock this morning. And the power shuts off all over. Sound systems, everything in the building, just building goes dark. And so we had a fun adventure of trying to figure out how to have church with no electricity. We made it work, and it was fun. But it was, good day overall. Can't complain. The weekend was pretty good.
I'm curious, what was the solution? How did you do it without power?
Candlelight service or something on a random Sunday?
We ended up having church outside, and so we just our worship leader, band director, brought his acoustic guitar outside, sang a couple songs, did what we could, and then so it was fun.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. You guys talking about the heat. So yesterday we had, I think the total was 14 teenagers at my house for a Nerf war that they had planned. They wanted to do it all day. And I was like, you guys will literally die. So instead they did it from 1 till 6. And my thought was okay, we'll set up some jugs of water and they'll be fine. Every half an hour, every 45 minutes, we'll check in on them. They'll be okay. No, I ended up spending the entire time outside because literally there were kids who were I'm feeling a little bit dizzy. And I'm okay, go sit in the air conditioning. You can come back out when you're done. So we were cooked last night. We were all exhausted, slept amazingly, still felt it this morning. I am very happy for the rain and the thunderstorms that we're having today.
Much better. I have a friend that volunteered for Racial Carson Challenge yesterday, and they said half the people that had originally signed up either didn't participate or didn't finish because of the heat. It's been brutal.
It's a lot. They were talking a bit about it on the game in North Carolina. It was, I believe, even warmer. The analogy they gave was standing still, sweat dripping off your elbows kind of heat. Mm-hmm. So, you could understand if the guys were at less than their peak, especially this being the third game of the week, and a very little rest between the Louisville game and this one. Guys, let's get into it. So the Hounds did draw 0-0 in North Carolina. Let's go through some takeaways. I think there's good, there's bad. We could just talk about whatever we want to talk about. Justin, I'll start with you. Give me a takeaway from this one.
A point on the road. You can't really complain about that. I would love to see 3 points at this point in the season and get a little momentum that way. But you meet a team that is in fairly good form anyway, and you come in and you get a point after a long week too. So it's not like this was the first game of a 3-game week. I have a little bit more problem with it, but you had a tough week and then you come out with a point on the road. Can't complain too much.
Yeah, agreed. I think that there are still pieces that will sort of pick apart here, but to go and get a point on the road in these circumstances, regardless of what sort of state the team has been in recently, I'll take it. I think we were throwing around the phrase must win for this one. Would have loved 3 points, but I would have hated nothing. So, Steve, what? Give me a takeaway.
Good showing by the fans. The smattering of yellow throughout the stadium was great to see. No, but I mean, I think, I think not just a point on the road, but a good enough defensive performance to keep a offense that has found a way to score against other defenses, whether they're good or bad defenses, right? Like we can talk about that if we want, but North Carolina has pieces that can find the back of the net, and we kept them from even getting the chances to do that.
Yeah, I think the stats claim that they had 0 shots on net, which I know that, we'll talk about Randolph here in a second, but it felt like he did have some work to do. So maybe I'm just misremembering things. But to your point about the fans in the stadium, when I first saw the 2 yellow jerseys with the bags on their head, I was like, that must be, like Dan and whoever else is there. And then it was like, no, those were just completely different Hounds fans. And then there were other Hounds fans that were down close to the field wearing like our current home kit. And then like the Steel Army had the banner in the corner, which was perfectly placed for corner kicks for a while. So that was awesome. And the rest of their stadium felt empty. And I think I've started to take for granted the fact that the Hounds have been selling out for the past few years and have such an environment that you do look at some of these other stadiums and it's just like, ooh, like they're not pulling the numbers that you would hope for this level. So hopefully that turns around. We want to see all of these teams be successful.
Yeah.
I look though, Mike, because it got me thinking. I'd seen kind of that point on the agenda that you were making. And I looked because I was just thinking through, and the Courage had a home game today, and so I'm wondering if fans are just having to choose. Like when you think about limited resources, limited money, do you go watch your USL team or do you go watch your NWSL game? And could it be that they're just on a given weekend where there's 2 home games, do you have to choose which game to go to? So I actually pulled it right before jumping on the stream. I actually pulled up the Courage game to kind of see what it looked like, and it was definitely way more packed than the game last night. Like, there was that whole like middle upper section that had nobody in it last night had people in it. It wasn't full, but it had people in it, and then the whole like lower bowl area. And I didn't, I watched maybe 2 minutes of the game, but like it did look pretty. It looked fairly full today. Yeah. So I'm wondering if it's just resource-wise or just having to choose which game to go to.
Do you know, Justin, are they the same ownership group or are they just different teams that play at the place to play soccer in that area?
They're the same ownership group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's it.
So you can't even attribute that to like better marketing by one organization over the other. I mean, I'm sure there's different people working on each one, but yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that we've talked about in the past about the advantages of having the Super League play sort of fall to spring, because then you don't have these competing teams. The same ownership group has more games happening year round, which means more money coming in. Yes, you're supporting 2 teams, but it will be interesting to sort of see, with the Hounds coming into the USLW next year, but them making it very obvious that their goal is higher than that, how that might potentially impact Hounds tickets, at least for the short period that the USLW plays next season. Yeah. Steve, give me another takeaway.
Oh gosh. I mean, I thought one of the better players on the night was Junior. He just seemed to, even when the defense was shutting him down and he wasn't having his success, he wasn't giving up. And he was finding crosses. He was finding runs into the box. I mean, he drew a couple fouls that gave us some opportunities. So, I mean, just great to see a guy that we've come to rely on over the past year plus, continuing to do the things that we know he can do, but not get, I guess, not succumb to the hardships of how the team's performing overall. Like giving it his all is great.
I keep waiting for him to just like tap out, because it does seem like he's giving it his all.
I don't think he will.
I know he's constantly getting taken down. And at some point I'm just waiting for me, like, you know what? I'm done. Like, I've given it all. It's over. I'm out. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I love the dude, because every like, if he ever gets the chance to coach like it'll be thrilling to watch because I mean I think his persona and his personality is very different, but I think like the way that he just lives and breathes soccer reminds me a lot of Bob. Like you can't have a conversation like, hey, like you're right, man. Like, and it's like it's immediately to the game and what happened on the field. Like it's just like he's breaking everything down and trying to think through like how he can be better, how the team can be better. It's super cool.
Yeah. That's good. One of my takeaways in this game was it was a bit of a continuation from what we saw in Louisville, which was interesting. We had talked about who the starter should be up front in this game, and it was Sterling and Kizza, which was not what I think anybody was expecting after what we saw from EJ and Mushagalusa in midweek. But that said, there was a continuation in terms of the evolution of our attack, whereas in previous games, it seemed like we were just constantly going out wide and just throwing crosses into the box. In this one, we had runners and we were actually playing through balls from the midfield through the back line into guys that are running on it, which is great. So even though we did not score in this one, to at least see that there is this evolution of how it is that we're trying to attack and we're adding different ways is a positive. The negative is that we still didn't score, obviously. Mm-hmm. I have some thoughts. I think two players in particular I think we're in a tough situation because there are things that we want to do, and we've talked about this, and I'm concerned that we just don't have the personnel to do some of the stuff that we want to do. And so how do you get your way out of that? I don't know. And not to pick on him, but we do tend to pick on him. But like Kizza had 3 passes into his feet running past the defense, and he did not register a shot on net. And it's just like, come on, man, come on. Like but on the flip side, Mushagalusa, once he did get in, basically took it down to the touchline and put a shot on the keeper. And then in the post game that the Hounds put on social media, Bob was like, he should have crossed that. That should have been a shot. It's like, come on, man. Like, he's trying. And it's like his second game. And he showed up like right before Louisville. Like, ugh. But
and at some point, though, like, that's where I push back on the premium shots that Bob always wants. Like, okay, but like if you're not getting those opportunities, then let somebody just do what they're good at and take the chances that they have, especially when there's not necessarily a good option to cross it to, right? Like how many times do we see guys cross it into the middle and no one's there? And I mean, watching the highlights again today, it was hard to see if maybe there was a late runner off screen, but he didn't really have anybody. I mean, there was, I don't remember who it was. There was somebody at like 17, 16 yards from the goal when he took that shot. But like, like there were defenders in the way. Like he didn't have a clear pass to that person. And so I'm asking the question of, sure, pass it, but pass it to who, right? Like let the guy shoot, the quality that he has at times, let him show it off. And quite frankly, I don't care if our conversion rate is what it is. What is it? I mean, it's way lower than what I talked about a couple of weeks ago of like 9% at this point. But if our conversion rate sticks at that, but we're taking twice as many shots, well, that means we're scoring goals that we wouldn't have otherwise scored because what we've done in the past under Bob is not working, and that's getting high chance shots. Well, let's take more shots then and force mistakes.
Yeah. Justin, you and I had talked in sort of the pregame to this about Randolph and how, I kind of said whether or not it's going to be a rotation or not, we might learn a lot about what Lilly decides in this game. And he decided to start Randolph, and Randolph got the shutout. Now, again, North Carolina technically did not register a shot on target, but there was still plenty for him to do. I mean, he came out on some crosses. He's punching balls. What are your thoughts on him and his performance in this one? And do you think that now that it's sort of been 3 in a row, is he the guy?
You just want me to admit something about this guy that I'm not willing to admit, don't you?
No.
Yeah, whatever. No, I'm fine with his performance last night. I thought it was good. I thought he played a good game, and yeah, he came for the crosses he needed to come for. He punched some balls out of the way. Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, I don't think the stats are lying to us in this one. I can't remember a shot on goal that they had or a save, a real like tough save that he made.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, it is what it is. I think it's until you start scoring, if he gives up a goal, and we lose 1-0, you still go back to it and it's like, all right, we still lost the game. Is it his fault? Probably not, because keepers are going to give up goals every once in a while, but you got to score. So it's one of those things that I'm kind of willing. I can go back and forth and say, all right, Randolph's not the guy because we lost a couple games with him in net. Or I go, well, until we start scoring, I don't know that any goalkeeper is going to look good on this team because, if you can't score, you can't win.
And
that's fair.
And I don't even think it's so much that he's the guy as Eric and Gabby currently are not the guy. And so until he also becomes not the guy, like, what else do we have?
I'm kind of in the minds. I don't, like, air quotes, love him, but at this point, I haven't seen enough to make me think, like, just don't let him go again. Like, I kind of feel like let him play in Vegas and see what happens there. But
we're going to get Gabby.
I mean, that's what's going to happen, Justin. And I agree with everything you said, where it's just at this point, it's like a coin flip. But I kind of feel like the longer you give somebody back there, the better it's going to be across the entire back line, because everyone's going to be familiar. Like, I did notice, it seemed like every time the ball was played back to him, almost like the defense didn't give him an outlet. And whether or not that was part of the strategy or not, he's playing a lot of long balls. There wasn't a lot of passes back out wide to the D because they just weren't getting out wide for him. And like I said, that could have been strategy. But just another one to keep watching, I guess. Justin, what else? Give me another takeaway here.
I don't know. You want positive or negative? No, I thought to me, like, Suber keeps playing in this season more and more, and I think he just continues to. I still don't think he's the best defender. I'm not sure. Again, it's hard to rate any defender on this team when we can't score because every mistake made in the back becomes so amplified that you look and you go, okay, you made this mistake and now we're losing 1-0. But I think, like, to me, he just looks confident and looks like he kind of knows what he's doing. And I think that becomes like, hey, you have 4 guys now who you're playing fairly consistently between Biazi, Hogan, Osumanu, and Suber in 3, it's 4 guys competing for 3 spots. And so I think when you have those 4 guys playing on a regular basis, playing on a consistent basis, subbing out one for each other every once in a while, I think the group does get more and more confident and does look better. And so I just don't think we, even thinking back to Louisville and in the past couple of games, we haven't had a whole lot of times where we've looked frazzled. We've gotten overrun on counters and looked out of position, but I don't think just in normal play we've had times where we're making last-ditch tackles or any of that kind of stuff. It seems like we're playing more confident in the back, but it just, they're not the fastest guys on the field, and so that's where, a guy, like we saw a couple of weeks ago, will just overrun us on counters. But I think for the normal run of play, I think those guys are looking fairly good at this point in time. It's just their mistakes are so amplified because we have 11 goals on this season.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I had taken some shots at Suber earlier in the season for his distribution, and it has been almost like a 180. So maybe it was just sort of a settling in period. It's interesting. You did mention sort of the speed and how they're not the fastest players. I think that's probably one of the most underrated things that we had out of Ordonez last year was just his recovery. The number of times that the ball would get behind the D and he could scramble to get to it. And now that we don't have that, that's like this glaring hole that we're trying to recover from. But I also thought, to your point, I thought Kayet did okay as well in stepping in for Hogan, which we've got to talk about Hogan. So I don't think we mentioned it on the last show, but I'm assuming everyone saw it because if you're listening to the show, you likely watched the games too. But in the game against Louisville, him and Etu hit heads. His head opened up. The rumor has it that he got 14 staples in his head from that collision. And then in this game, he goes up, basically another player from North Carolina whips their head back, catches them on his eyebrow, and the rumor is he got 10 stitches on his eyebrow after this one. So when it happened, he went down. You could tell he was in pain. And like as soon as we saw it, my wife was like, "Nope, I'm out. Like I can't see that. Like, was he the same one?" I was like, "Yeah, he's the same one." So unfortunately, it sounds like these may be two separate injuries. We'll try to get some clarification. But man, you feel bad for the guy. Like 2 games back to back, gets cut open. Steve, thoughts on the back line?
Yeah, I mean, I like what I've seen out of Kayet recently. Kaye, right? Kaye.
Yeah.
I think the T's silent. And I guess as much as I want to like push back against Mondo's comments the other night about maybe we're building for next year. I think my hope is in the future we're building a defense that puts us back into that level of where I don't feel like I'm worried about the defense, whether that's end of this season, next year. And I think he's a big part of that. He's looked confident as well. And then Suber as well. Maybe he won't get to this level, but his progression so far this season is fairly reminiscent for me of, and maybe even a little faster than what we saw in the first year with Shane Wheat.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a very interesting shout.
I mean, I love Shane.
Also,
like, cool dude, like great guy.
Yeah.
To get to know at the time, but like also like really was like, oh man, don't like his defense in his first half a season, and then his second half, like, okay, he's getting better, and his second season was lights out, great.
Yeah. One of the things that sort of made this difficult to watch, we talked about sort of Hogan's injury. This was one of those games where there were just so many starts and stops that it felt like neither team could really get into a rhythm. Maybe that played in our favor, maybe it didn't, but regardless, it makes some of the stuff in this game a little bit hard to judge just because you couldn't string more than a few passes together before somebody was on the field. So that's a little bit difficult. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I kind of felt like it really started with North Carolina playing a much more physical game. And despite some of the cards that they got, the Hounds were like, okay, like if this is how we've got to play, like going back through the game, I kind of sensed that last night. And then today I was like, yeah, like we rose to that level of physical chippiness with them and said, like, if you're going to play like this, we're going to pull you down too, right? Like, we're going to do the same things you're doing to us. We're not going to give you opportunities that you're not giving us. And in some ways, it's like, okay, like, I just want to see the team just go out and be better in every way, right? Like, and just dominate through being the better team. But, like, it was a dirty, gritty game where they said, if this is how we've got to play to do what we need to do against this team, this is what we're going to do. And I appreciate that in some ways.
Listen, looking back through my notes, I wrote down in the 64th minute that it felt like there was a goal coming for the Hounds. And then by the 86th, I said it felt like North Carolina was just hanging on for a draw. So I do think that we went in and not only did we rise, we were kind of enforcing ourselves upon them. We still have the problem where we can't score, but like, that's just, copy, paste, repeat kind of thing. We'll get there eventually.
Wait, have we talked about this?
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, short of not scoring, I think performance-wise, I was pretty happy with how things played out. I mean, Justin, give me a temperature on this game. Was it, thumbs up, medium, thumbs down? Where are you at?
Yeah, I think probably pretty medium, actually. I mean, I think overall, there was, and I'll preface by saying there was no part of the game that was thumbs down for me. There was nothing in this game that was like, this is not good. I think just overall, I'm just trying to figure out, are we actually a good team who's having a rough stretch of the season, or are we just not that good of a team? And it's weird because I do think like we have good, solid talent on the field. Like they're good, solid players. Do they just need to figure out how to play together, and that's the issue, or are there just a lot of teams who are better than us? So I'm just trying to figure that out. But I think like my thing is the last couple of games, and even previous to this, even previous to this stretch, I think all the way back to May and April, like it's always the last 15 minutes of the game where the Hounds look really, really good and like push the game and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, why can't we find a few more spots in that game? Like, I understand you can't press and you can't do what they do in the last 15 minutes of the game all game long. Like, you can't do that. But can you find that second gear, like with 15 minutes to go to halftime, like in the last 15 minutes before the first half, and push real hard then and try to get a goal? Or do you come out of halftime and push real hard for 15 minutes to try to get a goal there and just try to like put, you know, and it just feels like a little bit of game management and energy management. And how are we managing those moments to try to find that second gear that we seem to find in the last 10, 15 minutes of the game? Can you find it at one other spot in the game or two other spots in the game for shorter time periods to make the other team pay and to have them chase the game a little bit, where you can tire them out? And then maybe when you do that in 15 minutes, all of a sudden they're tired and just can't keep up with you. But it feels like we just kind of wait until, you know, 80, 75, 80, and we're like, all right, let's go. And it's like, man, if we had just gone before that, could we have done something earlier? You know, if you sub Mushan 10 minutes earlier than you did, you know, do you have that space? And especially with having a 6th sub last night, like, can you wait on it and kind of make your last sub with 5 minutes to go, but put your impact players on 10 minutes earlier? You know, I don't know, but overall, I'm pretty mid.
Steve, where are you at?
Just below mid. So as Justin was talking about that, my feeling is we are not a good team with a lot of players that have a lot of raw talent. And so I think like in any given game, or going into any given game, I should say, there are two players that I feel really confident about going out and performing really, really well. And that's Danny Griffin and Junior Etu. Hogan, I think when he is out, it has had a fantastic season again, but just with his injury record, and now 2 injuries in a row, right? Like I'm never sure like what his status is going to be on any given day before I see the lineup. And then beyond that, like Robbie has some great qualities, but hasn't been able to do the things that I think we've seen when he's at his best. And Kenny's not the same player that he was for 90 minutes anymore. So I expect good things from them, but not the consistency of 90 minutes of what we've seen out of them at their best. And then beyond that, it's Biasi's fine, right? Like some of our defenders are fine. Some of our attackers can do some things, but I'm not inspired in any way to have the confidence that we are a good team as opposed to a team with a lot of raw talent.
I think that's I think I agree with that. I think my temperature is probably right around mid, tracking just slightly up, just because I keep thinking back to the Indy game, the Memphis game, you know, even the Battery game, where we're turning in the performances, but it's just something is not clicking. And it's how far away are we from clicking? And the fact that we're willing to tinker, you know, I mentioned that we're attacking the game in slightly different ways. We're trying slightly different players and different formations and things. I feel slightly more confident after this game, again, knowing that this is the end of a 3-game stretch in like really hot temperatures away, that we're gonna turn this around. You know, we have the game against Las Vegas on Saturday, but then after that, we're home for 4 games in a row, and they're all Saturday games. So like we've got a chance to hopefully string together some performances, get some goals. And, you know, if we get to the end of July and all of a sudden we've picked up 3-4 wins, we might be having a very different conversation about where this team is in the standings and how things look for the rest of the season. So I think I'm right about at mid, but just slightly tilting upwards in terms of that. Steve, you mentioned Kenny. We do have to give the shout out. Kenny is now the all-time appearance leader forever in the USL Championship. So kudos to you, Coach Kenny, even though you don't like the coach moniker as of right now. But well deserved, and obviously you'll just sort of keep adding to those numbers over the course of the season, so that hopefully you can hold that record for years and years and years to come. Guys, any other sort of thoughts or takeaways from this game in particular that you want to talk about? No,
not really.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, we do have we travel to Las Vegas on Saturday. It'll be 10:30 game Eastern, so one of the downsides of traveling out west. But then, like I said, every game in July was going to be home at Highmark. There's a random 8:30 game mixed in there too. Like I think most of them are 7:30, and then there's an 8:30, whatever. I'm not sure if we will end up having a Vegas insider show. I'm struggling to find someone in Vegas who wants to talk about the team, so take that for what you will. But I will say that we will be dropping a special episode that I'd put together with John Morrissey, USL Tactics, on Tuesday. It's all about how to watch soccer. So basically, John brings a bunch of clips and sort of breaks down tactics and talks about this is the best way if you want to learn how to watch the game at sort of a deeper level and sort of see that chess match that plays out. He sort of gives you the tools to be able to head down that path and do that. So probably not the last time that we'll do something like that. It was a whole lot of fun. But make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel, both on your favorite podcast player or on YouTube. That's one of those ones that you're probably going to want to watch, but we made sure that it's still good for audio format. So if you're only able to listen, you'll still be able to pick up on some of the tips and tricks. But I think that's all I have. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about before we get out of here?
I mean,
I don't know.
Is,
I hope
this
this
a
season
must-win
turns
game?
around.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is Vegas is a must-win game now? Is that what we're saying? Early
I feel
shout?
like it has to. For me, it has to be when you're going to play a team that is really not good, right? Like a team that is second worst in goals conceded in the league, right? Like if this is the time to show that something can change, it's got to be this game, because it doesn't get easier after that, right? Like how does it get easier other than playing Miami?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would agree with that, and then I'll say it the same way I said it on Friday. Is it a must-win game? No, you don't have this is not a hey, you either win and you get in the playoffs or you lose and you're out. So it's not a must-win game. But at some point you have to break the streak, and you have to get a result, and you have to get 3 points, and you have to start moving up the table if you're going to want to end up where you want to end up. So is this specific game a must-win game? No, but then you're probably starting to get to the point where you've got to win 2 out of every 4 games and not lose, and is that realistic for this team? Probably not. So I think it's getting to the point where you got to start picking up some results somewhere, and this would be a great place to start.
Agreed. Alrighty, that's what we think. Let us know what you think. As I mentioned, we are all over the socials, Instagram, Twitter /X, over on YouTube. Go check it out. We posted another one of our little 30-second recaps. I'm just going to do that after every game. It's fun. The only downside is that the only recap that I get is sort of provided by the team. I don't actually have the entire game recorded. If somebody knows how to do that, I don't know if I want to sit down and break down an entire game, but there's a lot of other stuff I could put in there. I was literally shocked. If you go and look at the highlights on YouTube, literally the way it starts is the ref blowing the whistle, and the very next scene is halftime. And I'm like, well, okay, great. There literally nothing happened in the first half that they thought was worthy of including in the highlights. So thanks.
Which
USL.
in and of itself is fun to make into a reel.
Yeah. So, alrighty. Well, thanks everybody. I guess we'll talk to you all very, very soon.
See ya.